Joe Bob Briggs here, departing from our usual Monstervision format so that we can bring you a special TNT event, the full 17-hour miniseries starring Mark Harmon as Ted Bundy, the notorious serial killer who eventually fried in Old Sparky down in Florida. If I were you, I'd gather all the pillows and seat cushions I could find, because you ain't going anywhere while Ted spends the next several days prancing around in a tennis outfit, bonking babes over the head. Now, speaking of serial killers, have you noticed they keep catching some new guy acting like Hannibal Lecter, pulling a Jeffrey Dahmer, stuffing bodies down his garbage disposal or something? And every time we arrest one of these serial killers, everybody goes nuts. You see these articles like, serial killers, products of the 20th century, and you can hear people just shaking their heads, especially old people. They say, what is this world coming to? These people are out there multiplying. They're everywhere. They're hacking up bystanders left and right. What is this world coming to? Well, I've got an answer for the question everybody's always asking about, why were there no serial killers before the 20th century? Because whenever anybody says that, they're implying that something is wrong with the modern mind or the American mental health program. Bull stuff. These guys have always been around. The only difference between now and 100 years ago, we used to catch them after the first gall-darn murder. Now we just go bumbling around, you know, dum-da-dum-da-dum-da-dum, like Elmer Fudd, watching these guys walk down the street saying, wow, that's funny. That's a 34th, 18-year-old girl who's gone into that house this month. Must be some party they're having in there. Or we're out mowing the yard, right? And we catch sight of this quiet, mild-mannered loner who lives next door, and we say, good job on those rose bushes, bud. And he says, I shear from the bottom. Most people shear from the top. Do you shear from the top or from the bottom? So you go back in your house and you say, honey, you know that guy next door? I think he's riding around on his temporary spare tire or something. But you don't really care about it, right? You don't say something like, hey, man, what you just said don't make a lick of sense, and it's creepy, you know? Why are you talking about shearing from the top, shearing from the bottom? I don't know, from top shearing, bottom shearing. What are you driving at, Buster? In other words, you don't ever say anything that's going to freak the guy out and make him do something stupid or say something stupid so he'll accidentally spill the beans about the old lady's body that he's stuffed like a taxidermist and mounted over a tool rack in his basement. Do you know what I mean? There aren't any more serial killers than there ever were. It's just that we used to say, hey, boy, hold on. You're talking like somebody erased your floppy disk. Come over here and let me take a look at those 3-inch bite marks on your forearms. Now we just say, I wish that guy would move to New Jersey. So anyhow, you can see for yourself just exactly what I'm talking about tonight, because it's time to start Deliberate Stranger, which was originally a 1986 miniseries about Ted Bundy, the handsome and charming law student whose hobbies included tooling around in his VW Bug and raping and murdering co-eds. We'll cover the relevant info as we go along, and we'll also be recreating one of my favorite prison recipes, and we'll do the drive-in totals at the next break, so go ahead. Let's watch it. This is one of the most literal miniseries ever made, you know? Hey, Jim, did you hear we had another one of those murders out by the state park? Yes, Roy, I did hear, and the girl was about the same age as the last victim. Do you think they're related? Well, gee whiz, Jim, maybe so. You can always tell when they're trying to do realism in these movies, you know? I hate realism. That's realism.
Hi, I'm Rusty, the Monstervision mail girl. It's not an easy job, especially when Joe Bob says something really annoying, and I have to deliver 20 times as many letters from Monstervision viewers. But don't worry, I work out 5 times a week to make sure I can handle anything you want to send my way. Come visit me at Monstervision website, tnt.turner.com/Monstervision, and I'll show you what I mean.
See Rusty deliver the Monstervision fan mail to Joe Bob Briggs every Saturday night on TNT. Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and the Deliberate Stranger on TNT.
What just happened? Did something get cut out? He hits on the brunette in the yellow polka dot bikini, doesn't work. He tries the same line on the girl with the bike, goes off with her. Then suddenly we're with that girl who goes to the bathroom, and all we ever see is Mark Harmon wiping off the seat of his VW. Is this the whole deal? Are we supposed to guess what happened? All right, I'm going to assume that this thing gets a little more explicit as the night goes on, because we got a whole bunch of Ted Bundy coming up. And also, was that Emmett Walsh playing a cop? Are they expecting me to identify with Emmett Walsh as a good guy? You know, the man is in the Sleazeball Hall of Fame. He's right up there with Jack Warden, Jack Carter, for that matter, Emmett Walsh is the guy who says, "Come over here, little girl." Let's continue with The Deliberate Stranger. Oh, but first, as promised, I got to give you those drive-in totals. We have 9 dead bodies, no breasts, 1 yellow polka dot bikini, log to the head, multiple severed skulls, gratuitous gas pumping, gratuitous Christmas caroling, gratuitous ranting Italian mother, handcuff foo, mysterious shadow foo. I'd give it about 2.5 stars. Check it out. I'll be here with you through the whole dang thing. You think, you know, how come our pickup lines never work, but the serial killer's pickup lines work like a charm? Does that sailboat thing really work? See, that's my problem. I don't do enough advanced preparation, you know, because if I said something like, "Hey, babe, would you mind coming home with me, helping me get my car down off blocks? It'll only take 15 or 20 minutes. Would that work? Because that's essentially what he's doing. He said, "Help me get my sailboat, that whole thing in." "Hey, sweetheart, I'm going to be replacing a transmission this afternoon. Would you hold the grease pan for me?" You know, this could open up a whole new world of pickup lines. You know, there are a couple of you out there who followed me throughout my career. I know that because I see you lurking around in the bushes outside my bedroom. So you may know about the Find That Flick contest I used to run in the newspaper. Well, we've added it to the Monstervision website, and I could waste your time explaining all the details of it, but just check it out. Test your horror flick knowledge and win a cheesy prize. Go to tnt.com/Monstervision and look for Find That Flick. And stop following me throughout my career. You're really starting to get on my nerves, okay?
Visit the Monstervision website at tnt.turner.com/Monstervision. Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and The Deliberate Stranger on TNT.
Okay, memo to screenwriter, no more cocktail parties, okay? We get the point. Isn't that young Ted Bundy a promising young man? We'll all talk about when we knew him when, right? Cocktail party, no. Ted bashing victims, yes. Is this clear? I do believe that these are the rules of dramatic storytelling first perfected by the Greeks, okay? Aeschylus, he knew, no cocktail parties. All right, I think at this point, I'll fill you in on a little of the real Ted Bundy story. Ted has a girlfriend in the movie, Cass, played by Glenys O'Connor. You remember Glenys O'Connor? She was very big in 1976. Ode to Billy Joe with Robbie Benson. Yeah. And the classic Boy in the Plastic Bubble with John Travolta. Anyhow, Ted did have a girlfriend who had a little rugrat, just like Cass does, but they changed her name for the movie. I guess when you date a serial killer for 5 years, the last thing you want is for people to come up to you at work on Monday morning and go, "Hey, I didn't know you went out with Ted Bundy. What's it like having sex with a mass murderer?" You know, it wouldn't be pleasant. He also had a rich girlfriend before her who they called Deborah in the film, who dumped him because he wasn't sophisticated enough. Although in the movie, they kind of make him out to be very sophisticated. They even compare him to John F. Kennedy, so I don't know what that's about exactly. Then years later, he did something that most guys only dream about. He got his life together, won this girl back, and then dumped her like a hot potato. And some theorize that he was obsessed with her in some way, and that obsession had something to do with his becoming a serial killer. I guess that's why they changed her name for the movie. Okay, I'll cover more later, but in the meantime, roll film. I guess the real Deborah didn't want to be at a PTA meeting or something years later and run into the real crazy overacting Italian mother that we just saw and have her put some Catholic voodoo hex on her. On the other hand, they didn't change the first name of the dead girl. They figured she wasn't really going to have a problem. So, you know, there just aren't that many things that are scary anymore, are there? Fortunately, one of them is our Monstervision website, which is where we put the viewer mail we're too chicken to actually put on TV. Did you people have mothers that write this stuff? Good grief. You can also check out the weekly Playmate, provided your taste in centerfolds runs to scaly mutants and saber-toothed vixens. Just head on over to tnt.turner.com/Monstervision, and when you get there, do me a favor, okay? Keep it in the ballpark area of borderline psychotic. Don't go into that other zone, all right? We got kids logging on. Some of them are already mutating.
Visit the Monstervision website at tnt.turner.com/Monstervision. Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and The Deliberate Stranger on TNT.
The evil, leering eyes of Mark Harmon. That's how we know he's evil. The evil, leering eye shot, perfected by the Lifetime Network. Of course, in any movie on the Lifetime Network, if the guy is handsome, you know he's going to be a serial killer or a wife beater or a secret rapist. So you don't really even have to do the evil, leering eye shot on Lifetime. Anyhow, what's Mark Harmon trying to accomplish with all that smiling and running around like a nut? Is part of the sociopathic personality running around like a big goofball or something? Maybe he's trying to look younger, because Mark Harmon was 35 when this movie was made, and Ted Bundy would have been 28 at this point. Mark's still hanging in there on Chicago Hope, but I remember when all the gals had crushes on him back in the 80s. He was on St. Elsewhere. Probably didn't get too many dates after this movie came out, but actually that's not true, because right after he did Deliberate Stranger, he married Pam Dauber, the gal from Mork and Mindy, who looked really good in a pair of slacks, I might add. They have 2 kids now, plus they sued Mark Harmon's sister, Chris, for custody of her son the year after this movie was made. I don't know what was going on there, but I can imagine the judge in that custody case. Didn't I just see you on TV playing a psycho killer, and you want to take your sister's kid away? Well, let me think about that. And you know who his other sister is? Remember that blonde who used to do the Tic Tac commercials? If you can remember that far back, then think about it. She looked just like Mark Harmon. That was his sister, Kelly. It all makes sense now, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, enough useless trivia. Back to the flick. Mark Harmon's ex-brother-in-law was Ricky Nelson. Oh. And his niece and his nephews are all actors or musicians. His dad was a football star, Tom Harmon, old 98, played for the Rams in the 40s. Yeah. Mark's not related to anyone who isn't famous. Yeah. Did you guys see Babe?
Yeah.
Mark Harmon's pig.
Oh.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and The Deliberate Stranger on TNT.
All right, there was a scene back in that last segment that I'm going to replay because it was so unbelievably turgid that I need to see it again. Remember when the cops go over to the ranting Catholic woman's house to tell her daughter is dead? Mm-hmm. Watch how much time the director takes with this scene. Car pulls up to the house. Then they sit there for a second. Then they get out. Then they walk around the car. Then they stop to chat. Then they walk to the front door. Are we being tortured? No wonder it took them 3 nights to run the dang movie when they first made it. It was directed by Marvin J. Chomsky, obviously a big fan of Antonioni. Antonioni was the guy who believed all movies should happen in real time. If the guy has to answer the doorbell, you should watch him walk all the way through the house before he answers the doorbell. You can watch an Antonioni movie for 2 hours and they're still driving to the dry cleaners, you know. Actually, Marvin J. Chomsky was one of the directors of Roots. Only the most famous miniseries in history, so I think he directed the scene where Kunta Kinte goes to the grocery store and tries to figure out what kind of cereal he wants, though. Okay, let's go back to the film. I was just so mesmerized by that car scene, I forgot to talk about that tall girl in the toga mini dress. She was a big teen model at the time this flick was made. Terry Farrell made preteens everywhere feel bad about their bodies. Which is how they should have felt compared to her, because she wasn't on the cover of 17 for nothing, okay? All right, if you're going to write into us here at Monstervision and share your gripes, your opinions, whatever, and you're a woman under 140 pounds, single, and you don't have any strong opinions about any of the most common vices that men have, then I want you to use my home address because it's quicker. So just send those letters. What? I cleared this. I can do this. I'm telling you, we had a 3-hour meeting about this. It's not an attempt to get Nookie on TV. Well, you don't have to use that word. Look. All right, look, I'm going to have to get back to you later. But meanwhile, just keep writing to us at 1010 Techwood Drive, Atlanta, Georgia, 30318, and emailing us at monstervision@turner.com. I like Superfly. What are you saying about Superfly? Why do you use that word? What's the implication there?
Visit the Monstervision website at tnt.turner.com/Monstervision. Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and The Deliberate Stranger on TNT.
Oh, what a gruesome scene at the morgue where the tall gal's father screams as the mother waits out in the hall, huh? Kept that camera right there in the hall. Could this movie be any tamer? They don't show anything in this movie. Anyhow, while the police try to raise money for some high-tech thing they call a computer, I thought it might be a good time for Joe Bob's Jailbreak, where we read letters from our fine penal institutions around the country. And here to help us out, the ever-popular TNT mail girl, Rusty. Rusty, I think it's a perfect night for a prison letter, isn't it?
Actually, I'm not sure I want prisoners watching this movie.
Why? Copycat crimes? You're afraid they'll copy Ted Bundy's crimes and pick up babes in bell-bottoms and handcuff them to their VW, or?
His crimes were a little bit worse than that.
Well, not according to this movie, they weren't worse than that.
Well, I've got kind of a long letter for you tonight, so why don't we keep the witty banter to a minimum?
Oh, the witty banter. You think I'm witty?
Remember when I asked you for a raise and you said you would think about it?
Yeah.
I think you're witty. And handsome, too.
Oh, okay. Who's the letter from?
It's from Russell Thomas and Robert Sanchez at the Carson City Correctional Facility in Carson City, Michigan.
We can't read this whole dang thing. Okay, but you think I'm handsome?
Very handsome.
Joe Bob, my QB Russell and I have been watching Monstervision for the longest time. We don't do drugs, and your show is the next best thing to getting high. Actually, we just can't get anything in this joint. Seriously, though, we are diehard fans, if somewhat confused at times. Anyway, there's one segment of the show that we have no problem figuring out, the prisoner mail segment. It's rather amusing at times to hear what other cons around the country have to say. We can imagine what the letters you don't read on the air are like. Yeah, that's why we don't read them on the air. Russell and I figured that we could make a contribution also. Enclosed, you'll find a menu, a store list, a couple of recipes. This menu is generated by some, quote, nutritionist in Lansing, central office to all facilities statewide. Now, the nutritionist determines that we're supposed to receive so many calories and so many carbohydrates and so forth, and they've determined that these values are the minimum requirements necessary to keep a prisoner alive. The thing is, though, one must go to each meal every day to survive. That's kind of ironic, Joe Bob, being that most of us agree that eating the food in the chow hall will actually kill you. The food is that bad. You think that concoction you made during your show was bad? Ha! There were guys here drooling over that stuff. Ever have a soybean burger or a turkey hot dog? Actually, I have had a turkey. Oh, the fish meals are really nasty, like the stuff they use to make cat food. I could go on, but we're sure you get the idea. Believe us when we tell you, Joe Bob, it's very difficult to go to the chow hall every day and eat every meal, so a lot of guys don't, the ones with money. The rest go every day, all day. We call these guys state-raised. They really don't have a choice. A guy could actually starve in here. Those with the ability to supplement their dietary intake do so with stuff out of the prisoner store. These are called big fellas, and what they do we call hooking up a do. So I've sent you these recipes. The recipes are just two of the many, many combinations of stuff from the prisoner store that we can make with what we have. The first, the nacho hookup, and he has the recipe here for the nacho hookup, is a big fella do, and the second, the po man do, is for those unfortunate broke fellas. Both are pretty easy to make despite the amount of ingredients or lack of ingredients. Plus, we do have microwaves in each unit of this facility. We're hoping, Joe Bob, that you'll feature the nacho hookup in your next dinner in a six-pack segment. If you follow the directions and, of course, use the proper ingredients, we're sure you'll be pleased with the resulting meal. But we do want to inform your viewers that we are not responsible for the gastrointestinal disorders that follow. Joe Bob, the power is about to be turned off. It's time to go. Russell and I have been working on this since Monstervision started tonight. Didn't really get to enjoy the movies, but it was still kind of fun. You truly are a silly dude. Sincerely, Russell Thomas and Robert Sanchez, Carson City, Michigan. Okay, well, Robert and Russell, it's your lucky night because in honor of it being Psycho Criminal Night, we are going to make the nacho hookup beginning at the next break. Although I must say, you guys don't really sound like psycho criminals to me. With your grasp of the written word here, you know, this is a long letter. You sound like you committed one of those highbrow white-collar crimes, insurance fraud or something. Whatever it was, we love a captive audience. Free your minds and your butts will follow. So, Rusty, we got all the ingredients for the recipe here?
Mm-hmm, most of them. We had to make a couple substitutions, but they come pretty close.
Okay, well, stay away from the summer sausage, because I saw you, one of these things is summer sausage. I saw you eyeing that summer sausage out there.
What's that supposed to mean?
You tell me.
You're disgusting.
I don't know what you're talking about. I saw it. You know, it was a long summer sausage, too. Shouldn't be doing that stuff.
Joe Bob doesn't get nearly as much hate mail as people think he gets. I know because I'm Rusty, the Monstervision mail girl, and most of the letters I see are almost positive. I'm not counting the ones from TNT programming executives, because that's really not mail. Those are memos. Anyway, I do see your letters, and I do love every one of them. So come visit us at the Monstervision website at tnt.turner.com/Monstervision, or contact us the old-fashioned way at 1010 Techwood Drive, Atlanta, Georgia, 30318. You can even email us at monstervision@turner.com. Try to avoid phrases like lame, no-talent donkeys behind. You can't imagine how Joe Bob overreacts to those.
See Rusty deliver the Monstervision fan mail to Joe Bob Briggs every Saturday night on TNT. Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and the Deliberate Stranger on TNT.
Well, at least she didn't suffer. Just crushing blows to the skull. Is that what he said? No, that wouldn't hurt. These cops are real winners, aren't they? If I ever die of crushing blows to the skull, assume that I suffered, okay? You know what really annoys me about this movie? They keep saying she just vanished into thin air. She was only walking 3 blocks and she disappeared somewhere. And it seems amazing, if not impossible, that a person could be attacked, rendered unconscious, and carried away that fast without anybody seeing anything. And then they never show us how he did it. They make him out to be Jason, even though we do know how he did it because he told the whole story to Hugh Ainsworth before he died. Hugh Ainsworth is a journalist who interviewed Bundy in prison, and he got Bundy to talk about this hypothetical serial killer in the third person, and he described how this hypothetical third-person serial killer might have killed all these girls who seemed to be a whole lot like the girls that Ted Bundy was accused of killing. So they could have used that and actually showed the crimes. But no, that would have been too interesting, wouldn't it? All right, we've got the ingredients here to the nacho hookup. Recipe courtesy of the inmates of the Carson City Correctional Facility up in Michigan. So what do we got here, Rusty? What does it say for the nacho hookup?
Okay, first is 1 Sparrows salami or summer sausage.
Summer sausage, we got that.
1 bag of picante bean dip.
Picante bean dip, we got that.
Half a bag of refried beans.
Refried beans, got it.
4 ramen noodles, chili flavor.
Okay.
1 tub jalapeno cheese spread.
Got that.
2 bags tortilla chips. 4 microwavable bowls.
Microwavable bowls, okay.
And finally, 1 brown paper bag cut to 3 inches from the bottom.
We got that. Suddenly this is not sounding too good. Okay, what do we do?
Okay, dice the sausage into 1/4 inch squares and put into a bowl.
Okay, we already did that because that takes a lot of time.
Okay, mix beans in the second bowl and add water.
Mix the beans in the second bowl. It said bag of beans in the recipe, but I mean, we don't buy beans by the bag here in Texas, so we had to use these canned refried beans, but put them in the bowl and
add water.
I learned how to do this by watching the Food Network. And add water. Mm-hmm. Just a tad, right?
I guess.
Just a little bit of water.
Doesn't really say.
Okay.
Okay. Next, boil water in the third bowl and add noodles until they swell, and then drain.
Add water, in boiling water, and we did make this. This is hot water. Pour it in there. And the noodles, we got these ramen noodles, chili-flavored ramen noodles, right? Put them in there so they swell. And the seasoning, right? It said put the seasoning.
Well, it didn't say, but yeah, I think it's... I'm assuming.
Where else could it go? It has to go in there. It's a little silver thing that comes in the bag. These are all things you can buy in the prisoner store at Carson City Correctional Facility. Okay.
Okay, put cheese in a 4th bowl with a little water.
Okay, a little water.
Just a little.
Okay, I used all the water. The cheese dip, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jalapeno cheese dip. And so, okay, good.
Okay. Heat everything in a microwave. Sausage, beans, noodles, and cheese.
Eat these things in a microwave?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I could just eat them like this, couldn't you? They just look so good already. But, okay. Why don't you help me out here?
Okay, you're putting them all in at once?
Uh-huh. Well, that's what it's supposed to do, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Can you do that?
Yeah,
All right. There we go. We'll have everything nuked by the next break, and we'll continue with the recipe, so roll the film. That was good. Speaking of the movie, I'd like to know why the filmmakers thought showing M. Emmett Walsh resting would be more interesting than seeing how Ted Bundy carried a naked woman through a ski resort without anybody noticing. Not really the dramatic choice I would have made, you know? Okay, I'm going to shut up about that. Maybe. Are we going to eat this? Do you know how often people rip off our Monstervision website? I'm proud of that. They want to share what they find there with the whole world, and that's what the web is all about. Of course, we get the TNT lawyers to hunt them down like dogs, but you don't know what you're missing if you haven't been to the site lately. Not just the weird beard mail, not just the Playmate stuff, not just the transcripts and the downloadable photos, but we're adding new stuff all the time. New stuff to steal, so we can sue their butts. Check it out at the tnt.turner.com/Monstervision. We don't really sue them. We get a couple of grease monkeys to rough them up a little bit.
Visit the Monstervision website at tnt.turner.com/Monstervision. Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and The Deliberate Stranger on TNT.
So, the girl from the mall identifies Ted Bundy by looking at his shoes. That's going to be great in court, don't you think? Didn't work in the O.J. case, did it? Gee, did you figure out that they were trying to trace Ted through his gas receipts? I don't think they showed him pumping gas enough times, did they? I really think we need one more nozzle shot. Anyhow, I've got all the ingredients here heated up for the nacho hookup. This is, of course, the recipe that was sent to us from the Carson City Correctional Facility and created from items bought at the prison store there for nutritional supplementation to the regular prison chow. Now, I'm now going to mix together all the heated ingredients. I got the sausage, I got the... well, it's like, all right, the sausage. Well, I didn't say that I had a show on the Food Network. It's Monstervision. We got the, all right, the sausage, the noodles, okay, the, what is that, the beans, and the, okay, so it's all there. What does the recipe say to do now?
Okay, layer the bottom of a paper bag with tortilla chips.
We already did that. We got this paper bag. You can do this in your cell. You got the tortilla chips all layered here. Now what?
Pour a layer of the heated mixture over the chips.
This? Mm-hmm. Pour this over the chips?
I guess so.
Okay. All right. Looking good. It's very wet, though. So, and the paper bag is...
Not all of it, though, because you have to layer it until there's nothing left.
Well, should I just... Emerald Lagasse would do this, right? So...
You have to mix it better.
Well, you mean it's not mixed up right? All right, what does it? Keep reading, What does it say?
All right. Repeat layering until nothing is left. Put in a microwave.
We have more noodles than beans, is the problem. But
we need some more chips, I think.
Okay, while I do that, Why don't you layer for me for a minute? While I do that, I'm going to ID Frederick Forrest as my man here, Detective Bob Keppel in the movie. I'll tell you when Frederick was hot. That was 1979 when he did Apocalypse Now and The Rose, and a couple years after that, Francis Ford Coppola used him again in One from the Heart, which was not really up my alley, but he did star in it. Before that, though, is when he did my favorite of his flicks, It Lives Again, which is, of course, the immortal mutant baby sequel to It's Alive, written and directed by my pal Larry Cohen. Fred's a really good actor who works pretty often, but he never made the cover of People or anything, so you don't really see him anywhere high profile these days, which means he'll probably pop up in a Quentin Tarantino flick any day now. So Quentin, if you're watching and you do cast him, remember who gave you the idea. Okay, got it layered for me?
Pretty much.
I'm supposed to microwave this for how long?
6 minutes on high.
Okay, so we take all this stuff that's layered in the plastic bag and we put it in the microwave. And 6 minutes on high, start. Okay. Then what do? We let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes, right? That should get us to the next break. So roll the movie. This cooking. By the way, aren't you glad the Seattle Police Department spent the big bucks on that refrigerator-sized computer? My dog could do better than that thing. But the cops think it's really cool. You know, Sam, the computer, discovered something very important. Ted didn't know any of the girls. He was a deliberate stranger. Won't help us catch him, but it gives us a great name for the movie, doesn't it? We are going to eat this.
Okay.
I don't know.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and The Deliberate Stranger on TNT.
Excuse me, Rusty, but did we just watch a whole segment which was basically about interviews with people? The reporter interviews Bundy and the cops interview Bundy's family. This is about the most indirect serial killer story I've ever seen. You know what we should show? At Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. Now that's a movie that gets inside the psycho's mind. Anyhow, I'm going to say that scene with Glennis O'Connor talking about Ted tying her up during sex was the first dramatic scene we've had so far. Other than taking the nacho hookup out of the microwave. Are you guys ready for this nacho hookup? Because we did what it said. We nuked it for 6 minutes. We let it sit for 10, 15 minutes. So here it goes. Ta-da! The nacho hookup. Ooh, God. Oh, I got a whiff of it. From the Carson City Correctional Center. And the recipe says that now we cut it in half. The recipe says cut it in half, right? I don't know what that means. If that means it serves two or if that's just presentation. Cut it in half so it'll look better. Now, if we were one of those cooking shows on the Food Channel, I'd be able to tell you what to drink with this baby, but on TNT, I'm only allowed to tell you that domestic is as good as imported and buy it by the case. Cheaper that way. Of course, you guys in the pokey, you're out of luck there, so I don't know what I think they have non-fat dry milk. That's about all you can buy at the prison store. Powdered milk. Okay, I'm going to make the crew try this. While Ted Bundy goes to trial here, and I'll come back at you with some interesting serial killer info. So, you guys come on up. We'll just use the same spoon, you know, communal spoon. Come on up here. Roll the movie. Did you know that the lawyers auctioned off Jeffrey Dahmer's plates and silverware to raise money for his victims' families? And the only thing sicker than a cannibal serial killer is the guy who buys his plates, right? Why didn't they auction off Ted Bundy's VW, you know? All these serial killers, they have some kinky thing that they do, like, well, like Ted's tying up girls. Well, it depends on your definition of kinky, you know. I had a few spare neckties lying. It wasn't any big. Anyway, Ernie, you want to go first?
Come on, Ernie.
Because the other thing you can. We got plenty. Don't worry. We got more. You know, I always just enjoy so much reading the viewer mail, especially the hate mail. Makes me feel humble as a person. Of course, I'm not as likely to read that on the air. So if you want me to read your mail on the air, try sucking up to me. That works better. And send copies to the bigwigs over at the network. Send your letters care of Monstervision at 1010 Techwood Drive, Atlanta, Georgia, 30318. Emails go to monstervision@turner.com or visit the Monstervision website. You can do it from there. But don't send the high sheriffs the negative comments because they're just not used to it like I am. They tend to overreact a little bit.
Visit the Monstervision website at tnt.turner.com/Monstervision. Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and the Deliberate Stranger on TNT.
Man, that nacho hookup, did you guys enjoy it as much as I did? Okay, we've learned that psycho murderers can be nice to their mothers, so it's probably a good time to cover the 4 main types of serial killers, according to what the crack TNT research department found out for me. The first type of serial killer is the visionary type. Now, this is the type who kills because he hears voices or has visions. They claim, God told me to kill all the prostitutes, or Satan told me to kill anybody driving a green Yugo. If you're this type, plead insanity, all right? The second type of serial killer is the mission-oriented type. This is basically the same as the first type, except that there are no voices involved. The killer thinks of it all himself. I'm going to rid society of all people who wear Birkenstocks. They think they're doing the community a big service, and they probably are, now that I think about ridding the society of Birkenstocks. If you're this type, your neighbors will always be quoted as saying, he was such a nice young man. The third type is my personal favorite, the hedonistic type. This is the type who kill because they like it, like Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs with his fava beans and Chianti. Of course, he's fictitious, but there are real guys like that who we'll cover at the next break. But if you're this type, you have experienced peakerism. If I tell you what peakerism is, my show will probably get canceled, but let's just say that one person's getting very physically happy while the other person's getting very physically dead. All right, I better move on to the fourth type of serial killer, which is the power control-oriented type. This is where Ted Bundy falls in. This type gets his happies from the capture and control of his powerless victim and making them obey his every command. They like to feel important. They're aware of the rules of society, but choose to ignore them. So if you have problems picking up chicks without a crowbar in your hand, probably this type, like Ted Bundy. Of course, that means I can't pick up chicks under any circumstances, so maybe I'm that type. Maybe we should get back to the flick. Go. That's about the only thing I hadn't tried, too. You know what happened if I tried that? The girl would say, you're not really gripping that crowbar correctly. I have a boyfriend who really knows how to use that crowbar. You see, this is freaky times we live in, you know? People are into all kinds of stuff.
What would you do for a Monstervision t-shirt? Never mind, don't tell me I've already seen some of your propositions. Well, I'll make it easy for you. Try to win one through our Monstervision Caption contest. All you have to do is make the 6-headed jury laugh. To try, just go to tnt.turner.com/Monstervision. Go on, try it. And when you get your t-shirt, take a picture of yourself in it and send it to me. I'll put it where I put all my fan mail. And wouldn't you like to know where that is?
Play the Monster Caption contest and win a free t-shirt at tnt.turner.com/Monstervision. Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and the Deliberate Stranger on TNT.
Man, is this the talkiest movie ever made or what? Bunch of cops and reporters sitting around talking about the case. Who makes a serial killer movie and doesn't put any serial killing in it? Okay, that's George Grizzard as Richard Larson, and he did write a book called The Deliberate Stranger, which is out of print. Otherwise, I'd have a copy here and we'd wave it around like I'd actually read it or something. All right, there's no way I can cover every serial killer with the time we have remaining, so what I'm going to do is just tell you who some of the big ones were in history and what each of them taught us. Jack the Ripper, one of the most famous, taught us that Victorian forensics make it easy to get away with murder. Albert Fish, who was around during the Depression, taught us that children may not taste any better than adults, but they're easier to catch. Adolf Hitler taught us that if you have guys in uniform doing the killing, they don't put you on the serial killer list. Eddie Gain taught us that you can make a belt out of nipples, but you probably shouldn't wear it out of the house. Albert DeSalvo taught us that Boston is a big city, but somebody's got to do the strangling. The son of Sam taught us the value of the phrase, honor thy father. Henry Lee Lucas taught us that if you tell the authorities you're going to kill your mother if they let you out of jail, they still let you out of jail. John Wayne Gacy taught us that people love a guy in a clown suit. And Jeffrey Dahmer taught us that a box of baking soda in the fridge doesn't really mask the odors of a severed head. Okay, I probably should have saved that stuff for the end of the movie, but I wanted to give it to you before the sun comes up, so back to the flick. One of my favorite quotes, actually, this is serious. This is something that Henry Lee Lucas actually said. He said, other than the killing, I've been nice to everybody all my life. Other than the killing. That's good to hear, isn't it? That makes us feel very good, Henry Lee.
Hi, I'm Rusty, the Monstervision mail girl. It's not an easy job, especially when Joe Bob says something really annoying, and I have to deliver 20 times as many letters from Monstervision viewers. But don't worry, I work out 5 times a week to make sure I can handle anything you want to send my way. Come visit me at Monstervision website, tnt.turner.com/Monstervision, and I'll show you what I mean.
See Rusty deliver the Monstervision fan mail to Joe Bob Briggs every Saturday night on TNT. Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and the Deliberate Stranger on TNT.
So, Ted's getting a little action on the side from old Martha. And do we think that prison guard lost his job there in Aspen? This movie's missing something, though, and I'll tell you what it is. It's missing the fact that Ted Bundy sexually assaulted and killed these victims. Remember when the father of the tall gal screamed in the morgue? Well, it wasn't because she had a little contusion over the left eye. So here's my question. Why would NBC air a miniseries about a serial killer, not provide any motivation for his killings, presumably so he doesn't appear sympathetic, but then not tell us what he really did? Never mind that they don't show it, they're not even mentioning it. Thank goodness I'm here to tell you. You know, so far they've made him look about as evil as a stone chihuahua. All right, we're getting close to the end here, so let's get back to it. You know, all Ted had to do was drive down off that mountain and not act like a drunk driver, and he would have been home free. But see, the way they did this movie, you're so not aware of what Bundy did that when he escapes, a part of your brain is going, hey, yeah, man, hope he makes it. You don't think, oh, my God, Hannibal Lecter is loose. You think, oh, look, Mark Harmon's stealing a car. Isn't that cute? You know, there are a couple of you out there who've followed me throughout my career. I know that because I see you lurking around in the bushes outside my bedroom. So you may know about the Find That Flick contest I used to run in the newspaper. Well, we've added it to the Monstervision website, and I could waste your time explaining all the details of it, but just check it out. Test your horror flick knowledge and win a cheesy prize. Go to tnt.com/Monstervision and look for Find That Flick. And stop following me throughout my career. You're really starting to get on my nerves, okay?
Visit the Monstervision website at tnt.turner.com/Monstervision. Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and the Deliberate Stranger on TNT.
He's a time bomb, Jerry. We've got to find him. That's how they're trying to create suspense in this thing. By the way, that scene where Ted lifts himself out of his jail cell and into some guy's apartment, that's why guys in prison work out. Okay, let's go to the thrilling conclusion of Deliberate Stranger. All of our incarcerated viewers just looked at each other and added 20 more pull-ups to their daily routine. You know, high protein, low carbs. Did you see that, guys? One more sweet potato salad and he wouldn't have gotten out of there, would he?
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and the Deliberate Stranger on TNT.
Well, we finally got a little glimpse of the brutality and violence of Ted Bundy, although they neglected to mention that there were 4 sorority babes who got attacked that night. 2 of them died, and one of them had a bedpost. Well, I guess there's a reason they didn't mention that part of it. Anyway, Ted Bundy was executed on January 24th, 1989, just over 10 years ago. and we almost had an anniversary show. And you might remember that right before he died, he tried the old pornography made me do it defense.
Yeah.
He told his whole story to one of those right-wing Christian loonies. He was the only guy he'd talk to. No one pointed out that Ted, even the Dark brothers don't make movies about bashing in the heads of sorority girls, you know? So anyway, next week is going to be a little tamer. We've got Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, where Patrick Wayne travels the world to get into Jane Seymour's harem pants, and Clash of the Titans, featuring Laurence Olivier and Harry Hamlin. That's an unlikely acting duo, isn't it? But the monsters in both films were animated by the great Ray Harryhausen, so check them out. That's it for me, Joe Bob Briggs, reminding you that the more you complain, the longer God lets you live. Did you guys hear the one about the 3 convicts who are on their way to prison? Well, they're each allowed to take one item with them to help them occupy their time while incarcerated. So on the bus, the first convict turns to the guy next to him and he says, "So what did you bring?" And the second convict pulls out a box of paints and he says that he plans to become the Grandma Moses of jail.
Oh.
He asked the first guy what he brought. And the first convict pulls out a deck of cards and he says, "I brought cards because I can play poker, solitaire, gin, any number of games." So meanwhile, the third convict is just sitting there grinning to himself. And the other 2 notice him and they say, "Why are you so smug? What did you bring?" The guy pulls out a box of tampons and he smiles and he says, "I brought these." And the 2 guys are really confused and they say, "What can you do with those?" And the convict says, "Well, according to the box, I can go horseback riding, swimming, roller skating." Joe Bob Briggs reminding you that the drive-in will never die. You didn't like that one? A snail. A snail gets beaten up by 2 turtles. He goes to the police and they ask him, "Did you get a good look at the turtles who did this?" And the snail says, "Well, it all happened so fast."